one day there'll be a news story about someone like pulls off a crime while they were like doing a podcast, and no one. So they have this awesome alibi, you know.
He just has his AirPods in.
There's a Film Riot short in that.
Welcome to the Film Riot podcast. Today on the show, we have my friend Dan Trachtenberg, who is a director that did the film 10 Cloverfield Lane, which I'm positive that you've seen. If you haven't seen it, go watch it right now. It's a great film, and we do talk a little bit about it, so don't want to spoil it. So watch that before you listen to this. He also directed an episode of Black Mirror and the upcoming show The Boys for Amazon. He's done really great work, some great short films. We'll put all of that in the episode page for this episode, so you can check all that stuff out. But Dan, as always, was really interesting, honest, and open, and had really great things to say, so I'm excited to get into that. But before we do, I got to thank our sponsor, which is Aperture. Aperture is a company we talk a lot about on the show because they have really great gear, but also they just line up with everything Film Riot's all about, and that's trying to get the most quality possible without the massive budgets. So they have really great gear for filmmakers like lights and all kinds of other things, but without breaking the bank. They bring that high quality without the high price. We have a bunch of reviews on the webpage for this episode that you could check out from stuff that we've shown on the show before. They also have some really great products coming out that I'm not 100% sure I can talk about, and a lot of awesome modifiers. So again, jump over to the episode page for this episode at filmriot.com/podcast and check all that stuff out. And also another audio disclaimer, you're going to hear a garbage truck happening like midway through this episode. Just ignore it like it never happened. But that's it. Let's jump into it right now with Dan. Jumping into it, you went to film school, right?
I did, yeah.
And did you finish? Did you drop out?
No, I finished.
What school did you go to?
I went to Temple University in Philadelphia.
Oh, okay.
I, like many of my generation and previous and post, was really anxious to go to USC or NYU. Those were the big two. And I applied to both. I came out to LA to visit USC, was in love with it, and then arrived home and got the rejection letter from both NYU and USC in the same mailbox.
Those bastards.
Yeah. So my fallback was Temple, which is local. I grew up in northeast suburbs of Philadelphia. As a consolation prize, my parents, sensing my disappointment, they allowed me to do this and helped me go to the New York Film Academy.
Oh, yeah.
In Union Square in New York. And so I spent the summer there, which really was incredible. I hadn't even graduated high school yet through the timing of it, and went off to spend a summer in New York and get a leg up and really learn filmmaking, shooting on film, cutting on film. And I was awful. I was like the least talented student in that group. But at the end of the program, you make a full-on short film. And the short that I did actually really was successful and was a lot of fun and got a great reaction from the audience. And it was this incredibly rewarding experience, reassuring and validating, like, okay, I am doing the right thing. I sucked for a while, but there's something. I do have some sort of knack for this.
Yeah.
If I try.
Is that short online anywhere?
No, it's not even. It's like I transferred it to VHS,
Okay.
Yeah, from film by shooting they stuck a VHS camera pointed at a screen to transfer the film to. So then going to Temple, I had already known I didn't have to take a lot of the introductory courses because I had that experience. So I got to do some advanced courses, but also worked in the equipment room because I knew how all the equipment worked and could test students on how to read a light meter and all those things. And from working through the equipment room, I met a lot of seniors and grad students and ended up working on their shorts in every capacity possible. And then I spent summers and winters, every break that you get throughout the year, I went out to LA and worked as a PA and a grip and all that stuff. So I really tried I didn't, basically what I'm saying is I didn't rely on film school to get my education. I think there were some great teachers there, and I don't want to foul mouth the school, but it certainly wasn't, I wasn't having Spike Lee teach my classes. Not that you need that.
Yeah.
But it wasn't, I was wary of the tendency of the professor at the school was more documentary focused and independent film focused, and that was not what my interests lie in, although I ended up doing lots of documentary style stuff towards the end and then even in the beginning of my career, ironically. But commercial wise, I did a lot of doc style commercials. But yeah, I really wanted to make sure I was getting a proper education. And I was very frustrated with a lot of my peers. And I'm sure this is the case at any school, at any college, really treated their education like any previous education and felt like they were just getting homework assigned and was thinking about the grades they were getting. And it's like, no, you're not learning this to get grades. You're learning this to do it. Like, it doesn't matter what the teacher said, whatever. Like, you have to know this and you have to get better at this. Like, there's no, it's something I speak to a lot of the interns, the Temple University interns when they come out here every year. And I always express to them, like, nobody needs you. There's lots of directors or people who want to be directors and actors and writers and producers and whatever their program is and editors.
Yeah.
Nobody needs you. There's plenty of people to do it in terms of bodies, flesh. You know, what they need is something that they don't have already. They need you to provide something that is so wonderful that it doesn't already exist. So you need to be working as hard as possible. You can't, when I was making spec commercials to get into the commercial business, you know, the challenging thing there is I had to try and make a commercial. The tendency is to see cool stuff and want to emulate it. But if you're emulating, it means that you're literally doing something that already exists. And the only reason why you would get hired as someone who's that inexperienced is you're doing something that does not exist. So you have to make something that's better than what's already out there, not as good as what's already out there.
Yeah. And then after film school, I mean, what's your feeling on film school now with the world being what it was? Because when I went to film school too, it was like none of the things that are available to you freely online were available at the time. It was like you had to go to film school.
Right.
Especially since I lived in Florida. So what's your feelings on that now? Do you still think film school is a necessary thing or does it depend?
I don't think it's any different than it ever was outside of the like 70s and 80s. I think it's as purposeful or not purposeful, depending on the individual's personality who's applying it. I think if you're going to film school, once you don't treat it like school, the thing everyone says that I agree with is what you get out of film school the most, besides access to the equipment, which now doesn't really matter as much, is the relationships. And I have these two friends of mine from film school that are writers now, and I've brought them in to work on several projects of mine. And that relationship was forged through film school.
Nice.
So that's really the power of the whole endeavor. But the other thing I will say, this will lead to a better answer of this question, is in general, you want to, everything you're doing is working towards finding your voice when you're starting out. And I had a Sifu. When I was a kid, I used to train Wing Chun, Kung Fu. And my Sifu said, practice does not make perfect. He said, perfect practice makes perfect. You can lazily kick a ball, a soccer ball against your garage 1,000 times and still be a terrible soccer player or terrible at kicking or passing or what have you.
Yeah.
But if you try to kick that ball perfectly and thread the needle in a tiny target, whatever it is, 1,000 times, you will get better. Then you are training perfectly.
Yeah.
So I apply that to the early stages of going to film school or doing shorts and all those things. Is there's a period of your life where you want to be making as much as possible with whoever, every weekend, your friends, your whatever it is, whatever you can do, just keep making, because you want to work out all the kinks. There'll be a period where you fall in love with a certain filmmaker, a certain filmmaking style, and you're going to want to emulate that and get that out of your system. And you're learning how you communicate to others, to actors, to directors of photography, editors, or people that you're trying to get favors from, anything. We're working all that stuff out. And then creatively, you're figuring out what is the stuff that I love doing or that I feel like I'm good at, and what is stuff that I'm not. Then there comes a time when you have to stop just making things to make things. Stop just doing it with whatever comes easy to you. And then start doing it the right way. You hire actors, you hire crew, and I use the term hire loosely. It can depend on what your situation is, who you can pull a favor from, who you can't. But you want to really do it the way that is appropriate, because That's when you really learn and you're making something that you don't have to apologize for. That you don't say, well, we didn't have a sound guy, so whatever, but isn't the rest good? No. You have to get out of that phase and into the next phase. So I bring that up as to say you need to do two different things at different points in your life. And I think Kevin Smith went to Vancouver Film School for a hot second and then realized, I don't need to do this. Why am I paying you guys all this money? I can just do this on my own,
Yeah.
And so it very much befit his personality to just go and make his movie instead of going to film school. Same thing with Robert Rodriguez at the time, right? But me, I was very immature and I needed to learn all that stuff and I need to have all those experiences, even though my particular film school I felt did not best suit my interests and my filmmaking style. I still got quite a bit out of it. I was not yet prepared to just go make things. So it just totally depends on your personality. Anyone who's asking that question, it doesn't really matter what the person's answer is. If they felt like they should go to film school or not, it really depends on are you in this phase of your life where you are gathering, and you are learning, or are you in a phase of your life where like you feel like you have this stuff burning inside you that you need to say and you can pick up all the rest. And it's also personality based on like, are you a guy who like can like self-teach, and like can get IKEA furniture and figure it out without following the instructions, or do you need to follow the instructions and you still end up with like extra parts that you didn't use and wonder where they were supposed to go?
Yeah.
So that's my long-winded answer to that.
No, that's great. I totally
by the way,
agree
you're
with
indicative of that too. It's like you spent the first however many years of Film Riot doing everything with your little sister and older brother as your actors, and everyone that worked on it were the actors. And then you eventually started making things with a more professional crew and you hired actors and you went through those phases. And I'm sure that trajectory was the right one for you.
Yeah. Yeah. And I had something similar to where it's like my film school didn't really teach, I say it all the time, didn't really teach me how to be a filmmaker as much as it just taught me like where the buttons were and like the technical side of things to get that out of the way. And then afterwards I went to work on figuring out how to tell, a story and how to capture an audience's attention. And that's kind of been my like thinking and path since then is like, how do I engage my audience, pull them into this thing that I'm trying to say to them or whatever it is, and then leading to, Ballistic, where it was just the full-on crew and everything, pretty much like you said.
Right. By the way, my film school was the opposite. It was not great at teaching the technical things. It did not have the best equipment, but it did have more, it was more film theory leaning. It wasn't what you were saying where it's like thinking about the audience and what have you. It was not a commercial-minded film school the way that I believe USC is to be, but it was certainly more film theory. So there's, that's good to keep in mind when you're looking for film schools is what you feel like is the thing you want out of it.
Yeah, it's also different. And it's just, I'm always saying that, and it's just because it seems like everybody I talk to, it's just proves it over and over and over again. There's just no one path. Everybody seems to have, there's often very similar, but they're always very unique to the personality of the person taking it.
Absolutely.
But after film school, you did some commercial stuff and everything. And before Portal, you were already pitching around, right? Like trying to get your first feature moving.
Well, because I was struggling to direct commercials for many years, for like since 2003 or 4. And then
just struggling to get the gigs, you mean?
Yeah, I was like doing 1 or 2 commercials a year. Like I was, I was at a company and I was DGA and all that stuff, but I just was at the bottom of the barrel in that industry. And eventually I was like, why am I struggling to climb in this industry just to get to a place where I could start at the bottom again and trying to make features happen? Because the commercials that I was doing were not the kind of commercials that would catch the eye of the feature world, like the guys that I was modeling after. So I decided to just do a short. And I shot the Portal short, but was not able to finish the effects for another year. So in between, while I was still struggling to get people to help me finish the visual effects for it, I did another short film. And that short film is called More Than You Can Chew. It was for a little like Twilight Zone for YouTube channel called Black Box TV.
Yeah. So you shot More Than You Can Chew after Portal?
Yes, I shot it after Portal.
I did not know that, I don't think.
And it came out before Portal. I shot it, like Portal was, a huge endeavor. It took forever to make. More Than You Can Chew was shot in a day and a half. and then cut together and visual effects done very, very quick, like weeks, and put online. And that's what caught the eye of managers, agents. And then I started going on meetings off of that. Meetings with lower level execs, but still my foot was in the door. And then Portal was finally finished a year later, and we put that out, and then that sort of helped me get a little bit further in the door. But yeah, and I actually prefer the other short to Portal. It's always, yeah. But the thing I will note too is I was hosting an internet show / podcast / internet show called the Totally Rad Show that was always felt like a distraction from me trying to make my career happen, and felt like a side gig. But the reason why I was able to do that More Than You Can Chew short was because the guy who runs Black Box TV was a fan of the Totally Rad Show and always heard me say I'm a director, and gave me that opportunity and the money to make that. By the way, the money to make that short was like $1,000 or something, right? And Portal cost me personally all my savings at the time, which was like the price of a nice car. So I'm mentioning this to your film studious, wanting to be filmmaker audience, to iterate what you say all the time on all of your show, but like it doesn't always take everything that you think it might take.
Right.
To make something. That it comes in varying degrees, and it can be depressing when you hear, oh, some guy spent like $100,000 to make a short film. I'll never be able to do that. Well, it's a whole spectrum of ways in which you can pull it off.
Yeah, totally. I mean, one of my favorite short films I've ever made, I did for $200, and so I've done everything from it cost us sandwiches to it cost us quite a bit of money.
Which one was that?
I don't think there's sandwiches.
No, which one was that?
Sentinel was sandwiches, and Portal. What I'm saying, Portal. Proximity cost us like $200-$300 total.
Did it really? That's crazy, man.
Awesome. Yeah, because all the gear I either because we were in the middle of nowhere. Like that's what I mean. You remember when I called you up and was like, "Hey," it was like, "Okay, where can find a middle of nowhere thing? What can you do? Where you don't need any lights and you don't need any of that stuff." So all we needed was really like a camera, a mic, and a bead board from Home Depot, and then just friends. And then we just got like thrift store clothing that we tore up, and then that was that.
So awesome.
Yeah, so it's like I totally agree with that. It's like it's even with the higher price shorts that I've done, it's more me purposefully just building experience leading towards a feature. The more money you have, the more crew you can bring in. I have the experience with those bigger action scenes with the full on stunt team and the pyrotechnics and all that stuff. So it's just building experience, but it's like you don't really need money to tell the story. Right. So I totally agree with that. But so after Portal, that got you into a lot more meetings. So Portal opened the door a lot wider for you then?
Yeah. It's like, I was going around and I had a few ideas that I was pitching, and then the Portal thing came out and it sort of made those ideas I was pitching. So like, oh, more than just we like that. It was like, let's figure out how to make that. So it just sort of.
Right. And that was studios that were saying, let's figure out how to make that?
Studios and production companies, producers at studios, that kind of deal. So the first thing that I set up that I'm still working on is
I was about to ask about that.
It's a movie called Crime of the Century. And so that was something that before Portal, I met with a writer that the agents connected me with. I had this idea that everyone thought was very cool. And I would tease it at studios or with producers when I would go on meetings and say, "Oh, I'm working on this thing." And they, "Oh, cool, let us know." And I'm like, "Yep, it's coming together." It was that kind of thing. Yeah. And so I met with this writer. We hit it off. We worked on the idea together. We got it into a pitchable form. And I think it was after Portal came out that we then, because that really struck a chord. It was like, now's the time to strike. So we went out and pitched. I put a little rip reel together for it, and we pitched it.
For those of you who don't know, could you just explain a rip reel?
Yeah, a rip-o-matic or a fake trailer for a movie that doesn't exist. And there's a bunch of them online that some directors have boldly put out. There's Kevin Tancharoen put his Hunger Games rip-o-matic online, or Joe Carnahan did one for when he was going to do a 1970s set Daredevil in Hell's Kitchen. You can track that down, but yeah, or you can watch any of the ones that just people did for movies. They wish that someone did one for the Thundercats movie. I remember it being awesome back in the day. But it really is just that. So I did a little bit of that for this movie. we had a little DVD, and it wasn't even
that
that
dates it.
long ago, but it was 2011. But still, and a treatment, I guess. I don't think we had written that. It was just a treatment, a little pitchment, and we left that with Chris Morgan, he's the guy who wrote and produced the last slew of Fast and Furious movies.
Mm-hmm.
And we pitched it to him. We drove home, and I got a call halfway on my drive home saying, my agent saying, "Do you have the DVD?" Because we didn't leave it with them. We didn't want to like leave it and have them, you know. And we're like, "No." And they're like, "You need to turn." My writer had the DVD. He's like, he had to turn around in the middle of the freeway, pull a Fast and Furious, and go back because Chris was walking into a meeting with the head of the studio and wanted to sell him on the idea.
Wow.
And so that happened. And then that night we got a call with an offer for it. And so that was setting up that movie. That is still the thing that I am just dying to make, and still working on writing it for a price.
And one that I'm dying to see.
It's yeah, I really don't want to ever say or do anything to jinx it. But it's a struggle. But I'm yeah.
The pitch doc that you left with them. What does something like that look like? Is it like a visual pitch with like a PDF with like a lot of?
No, that's why I did the Rip-O-Matic, because I didn't want to do a whole like pick treatment with pictures, and I didn't feel like that process. I mean, it's not that it's similar to having to download trailers for movies and do it that way,
right.
But I just found that to be more enjoyable. So I mean, I've done both. In commercials, it's always a visual treatment with pictures, with still images. But no, pitch doc was. I just mean just a log line, and then a treatment of just a briefer treatment of a couple pages on. The movie opens and this thing happens, and then we meet this guy and he's cool, and then we meet these other people and they're cool and they have to do this, and then oh no, this happens, and then in the end they do this,
Yeah.
But with a little bit more flesh on the bone, but not that much more.
And then once he sold it, and it's like they bought into the idea. Did you go into like a scripting phase? Like, did it actually start getting written at that point?
Yes. Then the writer writes,
and so now it's just more waiting on like an actual green light and budget dollar sign.
Yeah. Well, it went. I mean, this is 2011 when that happened. So yeah, it was that many drafts, and then other writers coming in and many drafts, and different heads of studio come in with different interests and trying to navigate their interests with what you still want to do, and different drafts, and then finally we get to a place where okay, now let's find the right price for it, and because that the different studio heads have different interests and how much money they want to spend on an idea like this, and so. Yeah, it's been a journey.
And is that with the right price for it? Is that something where they're saying, we'll do it for this much, and then you kind of have to adjust the script to meet that? Or is that something that you just have to agree with, where you're like, no, I need this much to do this?
Both. That's the negotiation, is because obviously if it was $5 million, anyway, of course, yeah, everyone wants to make a $5 million movie that then can make the rest, it can make so much more profit. But so it's not that, right? So you then have to work up from, if it's not a low budget thing, then what's the appropriate amount of money that could be spent, and then what's too little that you don't even get to enjoy the premise, because it certainly isn't a low budget concept. So you're inherently starting off somewhere very different than where you would be if you were in a more contained movie zone. So yeah, it's figuring out how low can you go and still do the movie. And then you start experimenting with writing to that notion.
So you had that pitch done. You're pitching around to other things too, I'm sure. How did 10 Cloverfield Lane happen? Was that you were pitching to Bad Robot?
Well, yeah. Well, even before 10 Cloverfield Lane, I got the Y the Last Man movie. So I was sort of the last director on that as a movie. Now it's being made as a TV show, to jump ahead. But I was on that movie, which I got through similarly pitching. There was a script for it that was cool, but I had lots of ideas. And so I pitched the things that I'd like to do to it. And I also put together a Rip-O-Matic. I've made 10 to 20 Rip-O-Matics for original ideas in other movies I try. I mean, in the interim, I've pitched on lots of different movies and didn't get lots of things, and tons of heartbreaking stuff, original stuff that I still try and see what I can take from and reinstigate, but also stuff that was out there that didn't come my way, that went to someone else or whatever. But Why the Last Man, they dug what I was wanting to do for it. So I was on that, developing the script for about a year, and was still on it when I'd met with Bad Robot this whole time, pitching lots of different, mostly contained thriller concepts. And I'm sure they even heard Crime of the Century as well. Like, it was like over a summer, and Why was either going to come together or not. And they brought up they wanted to do this small thriller in like the backyard of Bad Robot. Are you free like right now? And I was like, yes, of course. And I think the heat of having Why the Last Man and it looking like that might come together puts pressure in a way on places to think, okay, this kid's going to go do something and we want to get in on that before someone else. I mean, there's lots of different factors into how I would get that opportunity. But ultimately, they sent me the script, and I'm sure I was not the only guy they sent it to. And I, once again, liked the script, but had lots of thoughts and pitched all those thoughts. And they all very much appreciated what I wanted to do. And for that, I made a book. For that, I made a little visual treatment. I didn't feel like putting a rip reel together. I think because it was such a specific location, and there's just so many movies that it's similar to, that I felt like I'm not going to just show you shots from the other movies. I was able to get more creative by using still images and references that wouldn't have made sense in motion, that made sense intellectually, like showing stuff from like Guess Who's Coming to Dinner. I could then use that image to talk about things that I would borrow from that makes more sense than actually just putting it in a rip reel.
Yeah.
So that's why I took that approach for that. Although ultimately I did have to make a rip reel for it when we needed to get the green light, because I got the movie. The JJ said yes to me after I met with the producers there. Then I pitched to JJ. He said yes to me. Then the studio said yes to me. Then we spent almost a year, not quite, working on the script. And then we were all happy with the script. Then we had to go in again to the studio with the script to get where it currently was, with a more conclusive budget now, and pitch the studio again on why they need to green light the movie.
Wow.
And so for that, I had to put a visual treatment, rip-o-matic together, or I chose to. But
and working on the script that way, what's that pipeline like? It's like you're working with the writer and giving him notes, and then you approve that, and then it goes to the producers, or?
Yep. Yeah, it's me and the writer. I mean, it can always be different. I'm sure some directors are less involved, and the writer would go and write, and then they'd hand it into both the director and the producers at the same time. Sometimes that is how I have to operate, just because of the politics of it. But I definitely love. I'm a story guy, so I do love getting in there with the writer and hashing stuff out, and then certainly the producers and we continue to hash stuff out with the writer over and over again till we're all very happy.
And then once it was greenlit, does casting come after that, or was casting a part of helping it get greenlit? Like, did you guys have some of them attached, and that's what helped push it through?
Boy, do I not remember the order. I mean, officially, I can tell you what I'm about to say is me trying to remember. It is not certainty or fact. I can't remember if they said, okay, let's go cast, and you have a couple months to cast because we want to shoot at this date, or was it we wanted to shoot this date, we don't have the green, we need to get this cast to get a green light. We need to get a cast. Not that it was cast dependent. Like, if you cast a huge star, we'll make the movie. It was just that it needs a cast that everyone's happy with.
Yeah.
So I don't want to paint the picture that it was like, as long as you get this huge star, it wasn't that kind of thing. If we did need a cast before the green light, it just was who was acting in the movie.
With this caliber of actors, were there reads involved, or were they just all offers?
We read. Nobody for Howard, but we read a poop ton of people for Michelle and Emmett. But the actors that we cast were not did not have to read.
Yeah.
We didn't arrive. It was sort of like oh, these would be people that we would like, but let's see if there's other people out there. And then in the end, I'm grossly summarizing things, but in the end, it was like, okay, but let's see if we can have the people that we would really love.
Yeah.
I actually, John Gallagher Jr., I think, did do a little phone audition that was very cursory. It was not needed, but it was done anyway. And the irony of that is that we were using sides. We were using a scene from Short Term 12 as our sides for other people to audition. And those sides were accidentally set because we didn't always want to use stuff from the movie when we were just sending stuff out. And those sides were accidentally sent to John Gallagher Jr. and his agent called and was like, we already booked this part. So why are we reading that? And it was like, oh, whoops.
And did you shot list and board for the movie?
Yes, I shot listed. We storyboarded and prevised the bigger set pieces, namely the end. And then the shot list, when we were in prep in New Orleans, just sort of came together through conversations with my DP and looking at overheads of the sets and even through rehearsals. Then I'd have to do my homework and just sit down and write everything we would talk about. But we only shot listed about half the movie, and then sort of time got away from us. And there was a very daunting moment looming where I knew that we were going to get to a point where we hadn't shot listed the rest of the movie. We shot the movie in order, luckily. And that was highlight of my life because I had heard so often about Spielberg and Janusz just sort of walk the floor looking for creative inspiration. Spielberg used to storyboard everything and he doesn't anymore. And I was thinking about, could I do that? It's like, could I really trust like the thing that you want the movie to do, that you feel like you want to put so much thought into making sure it's doing that stuff that you could just have those thoughts immediately.
Yeah.
I was quite heartened to discover that I was able to do that. But I certainly obviously helped that I thought through so much of the movie already, that when I got to that point, sort of a style and a vocabulary had been established.
Yeah, you were sort of fluent in the language already.
And you think about what is the scene, what needs to happen. Okay, well, what's the wide shot? What would our coverage be? And you start to shape it from there. And you have a DP and a camera operator that you're all friends at that time, sort of helping you. Okay, what if we do? I certainly am not precious about listening to others, and we all sort of in it together, figuring out what should we do, and people are pitching ideas. And sometimes you start to put the camera up to set it up, and then as the dolly gets back into position, you go, oh, that move is way cool. Let's do that move instead. Like you allow for those kinds of things. The really lame platitude of Rome wasn't built in a day, I think of quite often. Because you think of a movie and how daunting it is, but really there are so many phases to making it, and you take one step forward. You keep taking those steps forward, and it's all fine. You work through it, and let your strong opinions guide you, and you're feeling, as long as you just sort of, it's like put bumper bowling, and you just keep squeezing the lane, keep making the lane tighter and tighter as you just make that decision, then that decision, then that decision, so that lane becomes so tight that you finally get to, oh, this was the course that always had to happen, and the ball can only be strike now because I've taken away all of the things that would be the wrong course for it.
Yeah, and then, well, after you did that, and after you realized that you could do that, and seemingly you were more comfortable with that, did you take that into then your Black Mirror episode and The Boys, which you're currently working on, or did you still shot list those?
Oh no, I still shot listing, but I'm able to allow some things to be, it's probably going to be in this zone, but let's see how we feel when we're, let's be able to be nimble. And certain things are shot listed, certain scenes are not. If it's a short conversation, then that you're going to be in overs for the most part, but you also hope that maybe there'll be something smart will come to mind of, oh, but if we, something else that my DP and I've worked with someone different who I loved in Black Mirror, but the guy who I did The Boys and Cloverfield Lane with, I may have even done this on Black Mirror too, but we sort of think about, if this scene was only one shot, what would that shot be?
Yeah.
And then you kind of work off of, we know we like this. We know this best represents what's happening. How do we then, open or close based off of this? But thinking of ways into a scene is often very helpful. What are we going to come in on? When you think editorially in that way, that tends to help shape things for you.
And are you working on the shot list with the cinematographer, or is that something that you're doing off on your own and then you bring to him and then maybe alter it?
I mean, you're sort of mentally working. I was mentally working on the shot list is a lame way of saying you're thinking about how you're seeing scenes unfold in your head. Right. As the more you read the script, every time you read it, you're seeing things more and more clearly. And so you don't even realize what a shot list is forming because you're just and for me, it's sometimes I'll just see a moment very clear in a scene.
Yeah.
And everything else I'm pretty fuzzy on, but I say, I know I want it to go down like that. I know it'd be great if this was covered this way, but everything else surrounding, I'm not so sure. Or there's a scene that's like, I've got everything, I totally get it. Or there's an entire scene that's like, I don't know how to do this one. So you have that, and then you start I start the conversation with the DP, talking about, okay, start scene one. Okay, it's either I have no idea, what do you think, or it's I don't know how we started, but oh my God, the final shot has to be this, where we boom down and we're in tight on whatever, It's like, great, love it. How do we get there? Okay, let's talk about it. And we'll say, wasn't there this scene in 7 where they're having a dinner conversation? We just go and we get an assistant to help us pull scenes from other movies, and we sort through how other people did it and see what we like and don't like. Or we'll have an overhead schematic and talk through it that way, or just act out with ourselves. And we'll go, great. We're not writing anything down at that point. Then eventually we realize, okay, we're a week away. We should probably write now the AD and whoever needs to. It's not a week away, but it's to a point where now the AD needs to start having conversations with you, and then we go, okay, got to write stuff down. So,
and what's that conversation with the AD like?
They're wanting to know, and sometimes I need them to help as well, but they're wanting to know how many days you need for the scene, or how much time do you need in this scene. Which is like the hardest.
Yeah. Is that like a best case and best guess scenario sort of situation?
It really is. I mean, obviously everyone's different, and I'm sure there's some filmmakers that have a real measure of how much time they take. And for me, I always forget.
Yeah.
I've done it a couple times, and I'm always like, I should really pay attention to how much time I felt like this took, and was it too long or too short? I haven't, and I will once again be very hazy on my next conversation, on the next job, but. You get better at that. But yeah, you're just trying to figure out how much time to devote to things. So that's why a shot list helps.
Yeah.
At that phase. So yeah, at that phase, we're trying to put pen to paper on, and inevitably you only get so far, because you start out with all the time in the world, and then by the end, it's like, now you have this meeting, 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 and you never get time to just sort of hang with the DP and write stuff. So
then, when you were shooting, I'm sure it was like a pretty accelerated timeline. I'm assuming. Were you guys editing while shooting, or was that all after?
The common practice is the editor is receiving the previous day's dailies and is cutting together the previous day's scenes. We were on so many different locations on Black Mirror and 10 Cloverfield, and The Boys, that I was getting posted scenes of the previous day online. And on 10 Cloverfield, the editor was just in an office near the soundstage, so we'd wrap shooting, and I would go over to his bay at night and see a cut of the previous day's work. And because we were shot so much of that on location, I was able to sort of refine and course correct and go back and get different stuff if need be. But yeah, the editor is cutting whilst filming, so that by the end of the shoot, you have almost a rough assembly of everything. And then on a feature, you get 10 weeks to do your director's cut, just you and the editor doing your thing before any other person, producer, or otherwise involvement.
Which that's like DGA rules, right?
That's a DGA rule, yeah, exactly. And in TV, it's different, and it's different on a pilot than it is as per episode, and it's different on an anthology series, a British anthology series, than it is on an American pilot or an episode. So I've had varying experiences so far on that front.
Well, how is Black Mirror different from 10 Cloverfield
Black
Lane?
Mirror and 10 Clover was similar. I mean, I had less time and it was shorter anyway. But yeah, I had a few weeks with the editor to put a cut together before presenting to the showrunners, and then we have some time together, and then we present to the studio or the network, Netflix in that case. And then, but the boys end up being actually similar, except that now with the boys, it's really the showrunner's baby, and so I'm in the room with him all the time, as opposed to just getting notes and then going to work. I mean, there actually, it's not giving it a fair shake. It isn't that dissimilar, but it's slightly different. But if I was shooting an episode of television, not the pilot or the premiere, just an episodic director gets 4 days to do his cut, which is really no time. And then they're gone. Then they're not in the editing room. Then they're gone. And then they just watch the episode air and see how it shook out.
Yeah, I heard from an actor friend on a series that a director will often say that to him, like, "Hey, great time. I hope they don't ruin my cut." That's pretty crazy. And then so you have your let's stick with 10 Cloverfield Lane. You had your director's cut time period, and then after that you're showing it to the producers, and then they're giving you notes.
Yes. Yeah. I mean, that one was specifically tricky because we actually did a cut. We cut the end because of the visual effects component for the final act. We cut that and then went back to cutting the rest of the movie. So we had this. Oh, wow. We cut that, then showed the producers, then went back and forth forever on notes on that, then went back to do the movie. It was all a little tricky.
So you had to lock the ending so VFX could get started before you went and did the rest of the film?
That's right. It was really weird. I mean, it would have been the same thing in the other order too, where it's like you're spending so much time working on one kind of movie, and then you get to the end, and now we're working on a totally different kind of like totally different mindset, totally different temp music. You know what I mean? Like it was all just so like, wow, remember this? When we got to the end again, and I was like, oh my god, yeah, remember this? Like so weird. But yeah, then you get producers' notes, then you get JJ's notes, then you get the studio's notes, and then you do it all again. Then you get producers' notes on you're addressing their notes. Then you get this, you just keep on doing drafts and drafts and drafts.
Yeah. So they would go to your producers, JJ, Paramount, and then wash, rinse, repeat.
Wash, rinse, repeat. Exactly right. Every time. Always getting better. Sharpening a pencil every time.
And then, did you find all that very helpful? Did you ever find times where it's like, I see their note, but I don't think it's what they're making the note about, and you do something different to try to solve what their issue might be?
Yeah, but that's almost always the case. Almost always the case is people give specifics, but you really don't ever need theirs or want their specifics. Usually, not always. Sometimes you get really great specific notes, but often the solution their solution is not helpful. It's the fact that they had to provide that solution, that they felt there was something wrong there, that is the thing that you find the most useful. And this is sort of a uniform. Any creative director, producer, writer receiving notes, they will say the common phrase, it's the note behind the note.
Yeah.
In addition to that, I was just talking to a couple of directors the other day. I did a roundtable thing and got to hang out with some cool people, and we all bonded in there's sort of this 5 stages of grief in receiving a note, where when you first get all the notes, you're like, what? Are you insane?
You don't know anything.
You have no idea. And it hurts. And it's like, ugh, are they that? Are they that? They just don't get it. They just aren't,
Yeah.
And then you calm down and you go, well, if I had to let's just see. Let's just check it out. Let me peruse. And then inevitably, in the end, it's like either, okay, they were right, or, well, what they said wasn't right, but thank God they said that, because, oh my God, I just discovered this thing is way better than that, And that happens almost every time. You go, what? You're insane. And then,
Yeah. You don't know anything about film.
It's a life thing. I mean, we get notes all the time in our lives about everything. We're through conversations, and it's always, if someone's critical of anything, it's human to get defensive, and then tempers calm down, and we're able to move forward.
What's a great note for you? Like, what's like the perfect type of note to get then?
The perfect type of note to get is something that's experiential, describing the experience of, I didn't like this, but I didn't feel sad when she was sad. I didn't feel happy. I didn't enjoy this moment. I wish I could have enjoyed this, but I was distracted by something else, or actually, even that's too much. I didn't enjoy the scene where she blah blah blah, or he da da da.
Yeah.
And I would enjoy pressing why do you think, and I don't know, I just and then you get to go, okay, well, oh man, yeah, either something immediately resonates and you're like, yeah, it's always bugged me too, you're right, what can we do? Or it's like, well, if they weren't enjoying that, maybe they didn't trust that person, so maybe there's a scene earlier where that something was off, so that when they got to this scene that didn't work. It's all that kind of stuff. But yeah, you want experience, and really you want the other thing that you want, and which JJ was wonderful at after he saw the movie for the first time. But you want reinforcement. You want positive reinforcement. And you always want to lead with that.
Yeah.
The thing that we can't stand that happens inevitably every time is when someone says, it's a great start. We joke about this a lot on my end of things. But that always happens.
Because it's also like, well, what the hell does that mean?
Well, it's really condescending. And it's really belittling of all the time spent. A great start is a fine note to give when someone's worked on something from in between a day and a week, depending on what the thing is. A great start is not something you say after someone spent months working on something.
Right.
It sort of is suggesting that you've done fine here. I can help you do the rest of the, what is wonderful is to not just get criticisms about what doesn't work, but to be told what is absolutely working. To get a burst of wind in your sails is wonderfully encouraging and will help you work hard. But also it allows you to know what you don't want to, even though sometimes you still need to touch the things that work. But it does help know that, oh, this stuff is working. Why is this working? As opposed to just going, this stuff doesn't work, and not knowing, well, should we address this other stuff? It can all become quite messy. And just always in general, and this is a life thing too, you just want to start with positive feedback before you ever give any criticism.
Yeah, totally. And it helps just get the overall temperature instead of just like, because I've had a ton of that where it's just the notes that you get are just, it's all the net. Well, here's I didn't like this. And it's like, well, so you hated it or what?
Right. It's human decency too. It's a way of getting around my 5 stages of grief thing, my 5 stages of note taking thing. It's a way of usurping that is by first hearing some compliments, and making you feel like you're understood, you're heard by this person.
Yeah, it softens it a bit.
And then it makes you want to trust the notes as opposed to feeling like this person is at odds with me.
Yeah.
Once again, it's the same as if you're watching TV on the couch with your wife and you're arguing about whatever just happened on the reality show. You don't want to start off by saying, you're an idiot for thinking that. You want to start by saying, oh, you really are insightful about whatever. But also, you're an idiot about this other thing.
But also, you're just stupid.
Right.
Did you test 10 Cloverfield at all?
We did. We had tons of friends and family screenings, and tons of little tiny couple people that I trust came in, but I was stoked for the public screening because also by that point it's like you've had so many debates about things, you kind of want it to be settled. You want some hard facts from people, and also it's like I've been hearing about the test screening my whole life, and I've gone to a couple. It's like, oh my god, it's my movie.
Mm-hmm.
I was pretty excited about that.
How many did you do?
Oh, so we did a bunch of friends and family stuff, but we only did one test screening.
Did you get a lot of useful data out of that? Did you change a lot of things from that?
Yeah, we got as useful data from that as we did so many things. The fascinating thing that we got from that was our ending was longer, had more set pieces in it, and the audience actually felt like it was too much. And that was surprising. That I was like, oh my god, we have so much cool, but they were kind of like ready for the movie to end, and I think sort of exhausted about, oh my god, another thing, you know?
Yeah.
So we lopped out a whole little. I mean, it wasn't huge, but another endeavor, visual effectsy endeavor, thrown our protagonist's way. So that helped in that regard. And I'm sure there was tons of other stuff too.
And that's all temp music, right? That you're using for the test and
Yeah.
for the friends and family screening?
Yeah, we go all out on temp. They do that at Bad Robot, and I've tried to do that as much as I can. But it sounds like a real movie, and there's a sound mix done for it. I mean, yeah, it was full on. That can't always happen, but it was pretty full on. Visual effects were mostly grayscale, but
After all that, you're locking the cut, and then you're going to your composer. How's that relationship working? Is he writing a digital score that you can then give feedback on? Because I know in the end it was a live orchestra.
yeah, it's all demos. It's all digital at first, but it's hanging out, talking about the movie. Some things are like, and you can use the temp as reference of we loved what this was doing. This other thing we always hated, but it was the only thing we could find. You talk about sounds you like. Talk about we talk about Bernard Herrmann, Hitchcocky music. We struggled with Howard's stuff for a long time, and I brought up Once Upon a Time in the West. How it had that haunting harmonica theme that when you hear it just like, and so it was like, well, maybe he's got just like a simple thing like that, and then it gets into the minutia of like when the brass comes in, it's a little too much here, or that's really fine tuning things. But I don't really have the musical vocabulary, so I'm really talking about. But I'm a huge film score nerd. As for Tinkler, Bear McCreary is also. We really connect. We hit it off. We were bros. So I was talking about other film scores or music things that I like, and he sort of was able to infuse the whole thing with that.
And then for the final mix with the music, is he involved with that, or is that just you with your mixer?
Well, he's involved with the mix of his actual what he provides for us, recorded from the orchestra. But then when we're in the final mix of the movie, there's the sound editor is there on behalf of him that's able to, as we're dropping in sound design stuff, he's able to, and we layer the music in and we realize, oh, it's fighting too much here or there. Instead of dropping out the music completely, what if we just dropped these instruments from it? So we made it simpler, or what if we just changed so we're doing that kind of thing.
That process always interests me when it comes to like live recorded music, because it's like, how do you give notes on that? Where's that process happening?
Yeah,
at some point it just locks and it's being recorded now.
Yeah, I mean, I could not. I don't have the vocabulary to give notes when they were recording the orchestra. So whereas I know like JJ is totally able to do that. He composed some low budget horror movies. So some filmmakers are able to do that. I'm not, so I'm able to before and after that phase.
Kind of find your input points.
Yeah, exactly.
So what do you got working on now? What's coming up next?
Yeah, The Boys. Yeah, so when this show comes out, I will have done the first episode, which that is what I'm working on now. I'm working on directing a video game cinematic. I can't.
That's awesome.
Say what it is, but I was doing previs for a movie, working in the CG world, and sort of fell in love with doing things that way, and was very excited to be doing this. It's a full CG cut, cinematic, and it's really, really fun. It's lots of mocap, martial artsy fighting stuff. It's been really great.
So would you love to make an animated film then? Direct an animated film?
Yeah, probably. I mean, this has been pretty great. So I probably would like that.
That's awesome.
It's pretty. I think you would too. It's hard to not like that. To be able to just sort of
govern over literally everything.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You get to be more graphic, like comic book illustrators. You get to it should be like this, and then you like everything is catered to. And then when people have cool ideas, you could just like do them, It's like, oh, well, what if we did that? And it can be made to be done perfectly, that way. It's pretty exciting, very rewarding, and you get more immediate feedback as you go. little bits of little cookies of reward more often than when you're making a movie. So
all right, well, thanks for all your time, man. I really appreciate it. And as always, it was incredibly interesting.
Dude, thanks for having me.
And that's it for today. If you want to connect with Dan online, jump over to filmriot.com/podcast, find the episode page for this episode, scroll down, and you'll find all of his links there, including his short films, Portal No Escape, and More Than You Could Chew. Of course, you can find me online at twitter.com/Ryan_Conley. And if you dug this episode and the others that we've put up, jump over to iTunes, leave a review, subscribe. That stuff really does help us out. Next week, we're going to have my friend Avi Uabian on the show, who's an editor and director. So that's going to be another great episode. And until then, don't forget to write, shoot, edit, repeat.